My name is Laura Nuñez. I'm a volunteer with SDOP for probably over 14 years and also a committee member of the Social Justice Ministry in St. Mary's Heart of the Sea in Oceanside. I grew up in a time when you couldn't say anything about your life or your situation or your family situation because it could be used against you, right? There were policies or whoever was in government had this own agenda about immigrants in particular, and so it was not safe to talk about your personal life. So I grew up feeling or knowing that it was not, that you shouldn't share your life with anybody because it could jeopardize their safety or my safety or the safety of my family. So when I graduated from high school, I'm coming with this idea, and then I joined the young adult ministry where I grew more spiritually at my church, and that's where actually I met Teresa, who's now an organizer with SDOP. And one of the things that I remember about Tere and I is that we had something in common. Like our stories were very similar. And then we realized that it wasn't just a two people issue, it was a whole community and a whole nation issue. So we got together with the priest from our church, and we said, hey, there's an issue and we want to do something more about it. And that's when we were introduced with SDOP. We met our first organizers at that time who took us to different events, different trainings with Pico, California, and in those training or events that we went to, we were able to network with other people who had they were going through similar issues, and they were sharing their stories. And I think one of the powerful things was just that we were starting to share our stories, which is something that I wasn't used to, because it wasn't safe. So as we would share stories, we learned that we had more things in common, and then we learned about basically the power that we had in ourselves, the power that we had in our stories, and the power that we had as a community if we united. What brings me here today is knowing that as a community, we have so many things in common, that that if we unite, there are greater changes that we can do if we unite together. I'm passionate about every issue, especially if it relates to the dignity of human beings, right? But I think that because of an immigrant, I'm more passionate about that path, right? I can relate to that. I can relate to family separation. I can relate to, seeing, others suffer. Let's say they lost a family member and they weren't able to see them because they don't have, documents. I remember one time we had an event and we invited over 2,000 people to show up to this event. And it was during the time that we were trying to get immigration reform to pass. And it actually was the first time that I shared my story publicly. But I felt safe because I was surrounded by first my organizer who held my hand and trained me to prepare myself for those, to share my story in front of so many people, but also the love that was in the community, right? And so I realized that the immigration issue was something that was supported by a lot of people, right? That people wanted a change. People wanted this immigration reform to pass so that many could have the opportunities they needed. When I stand up in front of this multitude of people that are listening to a story that they can relate to, and that they feel empowered and motivated to also share their story, I start losing that fear that sharing your story is bad. And, I start feeling more confident in myself. I feel more courageous, more than anything, because you're scared, right? But then you see how that is actually transforming the lives of other people and encouraging them to actually stand up and voice their own issues to the public and try to find solutions. I think that that's what allow me to feel like less scared of sharing story, but yeah, I feel like, no, this is important. Sharing my story will create changes. Yeah. In my faith community, right, or in my faith tradition, we know that God created us in His image. And because we were all created in His image, we have the right to live a life with dignity. So my power comes from acknowledging that, like knowing that I was created in this very beautiful image by God, and therefore I have the right to live a life with dignity. And so if I have the right, and then I know that my brothers and sisters were also created in that same image, then they too have the right to live a life with dignity. So then my power turns into, okay, I have the moral right to fight for my dignity, but I also have the moral obligation to fight for the dignity of others. Love yourself. If you love yourself, then you are able to love others, right? And if you love others, then you are able to see that whole idea about dignity, right? The first step in everything you do is that you first have to love yourself. And when you love yourself, then you can give love to others. And the way we can give love to others is to take action when needed. I always feel like if my faith is not accompanied with some type of action, then my faith is meaningless, right? So what I can tell everybody is that first start by loving yourself. Once you love yourself, then you are able to love others and do actions that bring justice to our community.